The following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block. With your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com and co-hosts Mike Tosaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At Options Express, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and welcome back to the Option Block. We took a little bit of a hiatus there for the Labor Day holiday here in the States, but we're back in full force today with your bi-weekly source of options news and information, and once in a great while, entertainment. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as the Options Insider Radio Network. And joining me on the old All-Star panel today, I'm happy to say he's back in action, back down from the mountains of St. Charles, Illinois, and ready to join us once again on the old All-Star panel. None other than good old Uncle Mike Tosaw from Know Your Options, Inc. Uncle Mike, welcome to the show, or should I say, welcome back to the show, sir.
You know, the good thing about only showing up once a week is it feels like it's been so long since I've been here. It always feels good. And everyone always thinks, oh, he's here. This is wonderful. And everyone's always excited to see me. So.
Oh, we're always excited to see you, Uncle Mike. Always, always excited. Also joining us today on the old All-Star panel is the man holding down the Options Express hot seat, good old Sean Fitzgerald from Options Express. Sean, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Enjoying a beautiful 15-minute break earlier today. Nice 85-degree day in Chicago.
That's all they let you off the chains for is 15 minutes. Then you're back on.
We get a 15-minute break. We got to take a
man. They've got soft over there on that trading desk. We got to talk to Grigas about this.
Well, when we do go on that 15-minute break, we got to take the old high school wooden hall pass with us so they know we're on break. But then we come back and get right back to work. It's been a very, very busy day compared to the last few weeks. So looking forward to the show.
Yeah, we actually have some activity to discuss. It's not exactly a 0.0% unched day across the board like we've had of late. And speaking of late, last but certainly not least, we have the man holding down the Option Pit hot seat, good old Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Sebas, welcome back to the show, sir.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Good to see everybody here.
Yeah, good to see you. See you live in the. Of course, we did the show live last week from the new Option Pit HQ down by the scenic Chicago Board Options Exchange. It was fun to get down there. I haven't had a chance to listen to the final recording myself, so I don't know how the L tracks running by, how that played in the final mix, but I'm sure it gave our listeners a little sense of place.
Well, you know, it was like the Option Insider meets 8 Mile.
Exactly. We went a little ghetto, but it was fun.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No, it was a great time, and it's been a hectic day. I got some new I got a new refrigerator, kitchen set type of dealie.
Well, exciting day all around. Durable goods.
Is your refrigerator running? That's the question.
Oh. The lettuce better the tomato better catch up.
That's right.
So yeah, no, I had an exciting day.
Yes.
Today, what can I say?
Yes, getting the refrigerator, that's a big day. Doesn't get much bigger than that.
Huge.
Watch the durable goods numbers for this quarter, because Sebastian, he's kicking it off all by himself there. Did you buy a washing machine perhaps too, and just round off the ensemble?
Dishwasher.
Oh,
dishwasher.
Well, there you go. So yeah, you're doing
dishwasher, range, microwave oven.
Wow.
The whole set.
You're doing your duty for God and country there, sir. So we salute you here on the old option block. And speaking of saluting, let's dive right into saluting the day's activity in the trading block.
The trading block.
All right, and that cacophony means it's time for the old trading block, and it was, as we alluded to earlier, a bit of an active one finally on the old street today. Most of the major indices closing up about 2% on the day, and of course the good old VIX cash not exactly looking up, actually closing down nearly 12% on the day to 15.66, down a little over 2 handles on the day. Perhaps we'll start there, Mark. Any activity in the VIX futures or VIX options that really caught your eye on today's activity?
It's interesting. Everybody always associates volatility with sell-offs, right? And if you go through every single major update, and we'll call a major update or a major movement day, excuse me. Every day with a major move.
A major movement day could imply many things, sir. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we're going to classify
it.
Let's call it a move of 1.5% or more. All right. I mean, I think that's a fair. That's certainly a move of some type, right? So since June, every single move of a 1.5% or more has been on a rally, not on a sell-off. So, it's just fascinating to me that that's the way things have gone. VIX got torched today. The VIX futures got torched today. An interesting thing, though, the spread between VIX futures and VIX cash, despite the sell-off today, is incredibly tight. Makes me think that we could get another pop here. A little odd.
Yeah, we haven't seen that spread really tightening up of much of late, and it seemed to almost be widening quite a bit for a while there.
It was really wide, and then it tightened on a VIX rally. All right, you expect that. But you don't expect it to stay tight when the VIX sells off, which I think is what's really, really interesting. So,
speaking of VIX and interesting, SIBO made some interesting news. The announcement, anyway, back. They're having, of course, the European version of their risk management conference going on right now, I believe, over there in Ireland, the hotbed of all things European volatility. And they announced that they want to, at least next year sometime, apply for VIX futures to get them trading 24/7. Sometime next year, probably looks like the time frame will be. But that'll be interesting. They're really trying to, given the fact that VIX has pretty much been the sole bright spot on their product suite for the bulk of the past year.
Sole bright spots on anybody.
Yeah, I mean, look at the whole industry. I mean, if you look at the Options Insider, we do a lot on the volume numbers and market share, and the industry has just been off abysmally, 40% this month alone. Of course, that compares to last year when August was a record month with the downgrade and everything we saw going on last year. But still, an abysmal month this month any way you look at it. And every month, still one of the few highlights out there are VIX options and VIX futures. They're just lighting up the tape. So it makes sense that they would want to make this product even more accessible to more people.
Anybody happen to catch that print on the February VIX 70 calls yesterday?
I didn't. What was the trade?
20,000 went off at a quarter. VIX 70 call, one print, 15 by 25 cents. Somebody lifted the offer.
The 70 calls?
70 calls in Feb yesterday, 20,000 times.
To you.
Wow.
Sold to you. The only thing I regret about that order
you didn't test it.
The only thing I regret about that order is I was not on the other side of all of it.
That's option pit size, baby. 70,000. I'm looking here. I can't even scroll. It's hard to even scroll my screen that far to get to the 70s. It's so far up there. But yes, here we go. 20,000 open interest. 16,000 open on the 65. So maybe someone was spreading some of that off. But yeah, was that customer buying, Sean?
No, nobody here. I'm guessing.
No, not your customer, but
might have their name on that one.
I'm assuming paper was buying those, or were they paper selling them?
No, that was the lift. It was 15 by a quarter all day long.
If paper found a buyer for that, then they're more power to them. They're a clever execution firm there. But wow, that's there's a lot you can do with selling the 70s in February. A lot of ways you could spread that off that would make that trade pretty attractive. Wow. That's
my understanding, actually watching the video, that was an order that was working all day long, so they were trying to get enough size. Because there was obviously no size that far out, and then finally the floor got it together for him. And who them is, I do not know, but somebody is looking to either lose $500,000 or make a big splash.
Interesting. That's almost Navabi size paper right there, going up.
Oh wow, Tim Navabi.
20,000 times. Yeah, we talk a lot about people betting on this overcorrection to the upside in VIX. This is the extreme example in extremis here for someone really loading up on upside here in VIX. Wow, you're right, Mark. I would love to have been on the other side of that trade. There's a lot of things.
It doesn't even go much farther. I mean, they only have 80s.
I know. I said I was hard to even scroll to that strike to see it here on my screen. It was so buried down at the bottom. But yeah,
that's actually two contracts on the 80s traded today.
And 6,000 are open. 6,000 are open on the 80s there too. So there's been some love on that Feb upside. I don't know how much of this is open recently versus has been around for a while, but yeah, 16,000 Feb 65s. I have to imagine some of that is in some way, shape, or form hedging against the 70s, and then the rest 7,000 of the third 55s. There's a lot of upside love here floating around in Feb. So yeah, that just kind of goes back to what we were talking about before on the show over the past few weeks of how people are, even though they're still aggressively selling premium across the board, selling premium out in the S, selling premium in VIX or wherever they can, they still are starting to see people starting to flock in and put on those upside kickers. I don't know if I would even call that a kicker. That's just a pure insane lottery ticket at this point.
That's a toss of the dice, if I ever heard of one.
Exactly. I wouldn't justify that with a kicker. That's more of a I don't know. Lottery ticket, roll the dice, bit of insanity, whatever you want to call it. That's a fun one. But yeah, interesting stuff going on. Speaking of upside, there were some names going off to the upside today, including good old Amazon, up about 2.5%. I'm not sure if you guys watched we always talk about hardware. We like to talk about hardware on the show. We have a nice tech bent here, and they announced finally some interesting potential competitors to your boy Big Apple there, Mike, and including the Kindle Fire HD and the new upgraded Kindle Fire. Looks like they have a whole suite now. You can get something for $200, something for a bigger one for $300, another one for $500 with, and I think they even say a LTE data plan for a year is just $50 for the year. I don't know what I don't know any of those metrics. But this kind of gets into the interesting approach that Amazon takes, and I think a lot of times the stock wasn't up as much as a lot of people may have assumed. I think because a lot of people on the street tend to sometimes denigrate this profitless hardware model that Amazon takes versus Apple, which is, of course, the ultra-premium hardware provider. But now this paves the way. Now that we have the Nexus 7 that Grigas has and he loves, has been using for a while, now we have Amazon firmly in this sub-$500 smaller tablet camp. A lot of people have been rumoring about the other big A, I should say, Apple, coming out with one of those next week. Of course, they're coming out with the iPhone 5. But Uncle Mike, are you spreading off on the upside here on Apple on the bets that they're going to come out with the iPad Mini, or what are you putting on here in Apple land?
Well, I mean, we have the iPhone, we have the announcement coming up next week, and for right now, at least for today, I'm monitoring it closely as always. But for today, where we're at on it, we're long the 620 put and then short the 690 call on our collar. We were in a back spread, and I actually made a tighter back spread, but it rallied up so quickly that I created a pretty tighter collar from the back spread that we had on. my number for Apple is 700, and that's been my number for a long time. And I was even telling Sebastian on the show a couple weeks ago, I have a special song picked out for the day that we sell it at 700. So once we hit 700, I'm not going to ride it up that much longer. I shouldn't say I plan getting out of it at 700. I'm willing to bet I'll have some clients that'll insist on staying in it past 700. But my take on it, I don't want to stay in it too much. I want to get out of it at 700. And right now, if we got called away at 690, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to me. We've been in it for a long, long time, and it's been a very good ride.
Yeah, he can't really complain too much about that ride. And Uncle Mike finally preparing, perhaps, to wash his hands of the big, delicious fruit company that has been
Uncle Mike, I know you mentioned this song last time. You're going to give us a hint, possibly the singer of the song? Or
is it like Nah Nah Goodbye, one of those kind of songs?
I'll give you a hint right now. That was the hint.
Quite the hint.
We couldn't.
That is the hint.
Oh, space. It was silence. Is your hint?
Yes.
The sounds of silence. That's your song.
Silence is golden, golden.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have seen traditionally not an earnings style run up, but a quasi earnings style run up to a lot of these announcements. And Apple's moved a bit of late, but we haven't seen perhaps the full on aggression that we've seen going into major iPhone announcements. Of course, iPhone being their chief product line now these days. And of course, they said in the last quarter that people pent up demand for this iPhone 5 was hurting them a lot into the last quarter. So a lot of people are expecting a lot of great things out of this announcement and the subsequent sales explosion that should happen. So maybe we'll see that post-announcement run-up where you get over your 700, Uncle Mike, and then you could wash your hands of Apple forever.
Well, I think once it gets over 700, then I got to start shorting the 620 puts.
Yes, you have to get even closer. Of course, if you're looking for a name to roll into, I know Ford's been catching your eye of late. Ford finally on a bit of an upwind today, up about 3.5% to close at $9.92 here. And this is the name we've kind of had go off our radar because it's been sub $10 and been failing to catch a bid for quite a while. And you were looking at some not too exciting spreads. In fact, I think we even debated on a show about a month ago the merits of getting into some bullish risk reversals on Ford versus just selling the puts outright, because was there even really any merit to legging into that upside, because who knows if the pop was coming anytime soon, if there was any even upside momentum for Ford. It's finally catching a bit of a bid today. Looks like it moved along with the bulk of the market a little bit better today. But I know you said you were looking at perhaps some credit spreads out in Ford today, or what ratio spreads?
Yeah, what we're doing with Ford right now, we're long the stock still, and there really wasn't a lot of premium to sell. And so what we did was...
That's not the juiciest name out there right now.
No, it's still not bad by any means, but what we wanted to do, it was depressed in value, and so when stocks get depressed in value, obviously I'm not a huge fan of selling covered calls against them, because then when they come back, you're fighting against yourself when you're long-term bullish on something. But with it, what we did was we bought a January 10 call on it for 41 cents a couple weeks ago, just with the intention of letting it sit for a little bit, and if we did get a little bit of a pop, roll into a ratio, or leg into a ratio spread. So right now, obviously, with the pop that Ford had today, this is what we've been waiting on for a couple of weeks. This is one of those stocks that once we put in, I'm typically not much of a fan of legging into things, but in this case, we were monitoring it closely. We had till January, and we felt that the premium was at a level to where it would justify buying it. So right now, what I'm shopping around in Ford is to see if we can create a ratio calendar spread, a ratio diagonal spread, or just a straight January ratio vertical with the 10-11 mark, to where if we did that, if we're out of Ford at 11, we'd still have an extra $1 on the deal if we went out to January. So not sure exactly which one I'm going to go with at this point, but now we've had enough of a pop in it to where tomorrow, with Murphy's Law dictating that Ford's going to go down 50 cents, I can then cry and whine about how I should have done something today.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ford won't turn the corner again and go back down until Grigas comes on the show next week and says he was long Ford from $10 or wherever he liked. He put his bid in, and then Ford will pull a Groupon and never look back.
I was speaking to somebody from Groupon today, and if I could give Grigas one piece of advice, it's sell, sell, sell.
Well, he's locked in now. He announced his bid on the show. He's so locked in.
Eat the 63 cents or whatever, and spare your kid, community college for life.
See, you could be like Mark and be short Groupon and buying all the durable goods you could possibly want.
I'm all about durable goods. How'd you know?
Before we go, Sean, anything interesting coming across your tape or catching your eye today? I don't want to steal from the Xpress Block, but anything you were watching or executing on the desk that might be interesting?
Everybody's just all excited about Mr. Draghi. I like to call him Drago, and his bond plan. But, there's a few meetings next week that Germany, this is not all a 100% certain done deal that it's all going to happen the way he said today. And, it was just a day of everything was perfect. Private payrolls, largest gain in 5 months, jobless claims, 10,000 less. It was just one good news after another. Today could not have been more of a perfect day for somebody who decided yesterday at the close to go along a bunch of SPY calls and see what happens.
Are you referring to yourself, perhaps, Sean, just loading up on the close? Lifting offers, anything you could see?
I was not an active trader yesterday. I regret that, but I was not. I'm looking forward to the jobs number tomorrow and see what happens there.
All right. I think with that, we're going to roll right into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, and that funky tune means it's time for the old Odd Block, and we're going to kick things off today with BMC Software Inc., ticker symbol BMC. They make IT software for mid-size and larger companies, and this name has been doing fairly well since over the past month or so, up about 22% from their August low, trading today or closing today at about $43.50, so up about 3% on the day today. And what we saw is an active day from an options perspective here in BMC as well. This is the name that does about 1,400 contracts a day, not exactly the most active on the old chart, but they did over 6,000 today. The largest chunk coming in a few blocks here on these October 45 calls, where we saw about 1,300 going up on the day, including a block of 1,100 lifting offers for about 80 cents. We saw essentially call volume nearly 5 to 1 of what it normally is here on good old BMC. And also we saw just some interesting activity on these OC 45s trading at about a nearly 30 vol. And then moving on quick here to Morgan Stanley, ticker symbol MS, of course. This name had a fairly decent run today, up about 3.5% to 16.25. This is the name that usually does about 60,000 contracts. Of late, they did over 200,000 today, with the bulk of them coming on a couple of big trades going up on these SEP 17s. These SEP 17 calls, over 75,000 traded on the day today, with the final number closing at the end of the day being nearly over 113,000. The largest chunk of these being a block of 50,000, which are hit on the bid for about 13 cents. This is the strike that has open interest of about 145,000 contracts, so a good chunk of these could have been closing sales. This is actually the second day in a row that the SEP 17s have been lighting up the tape. We saw 30,000 being sold on the bid yesterday for about a dime as well. So very active closing paper, it looks like, here in Morgan Stanley, putting Morgan Stanley well into the top five most active names on the day today, just through all this closing call selling. Someone obviously taking some gains off the table, or thinking that the run that MS has been on of late is going to close out relatively soon. I know, Uncle Mike, you like the financials. You play around in Morgan Stanley at all?
Just by hoping to get business from them, but not in the stock itself.
You still pretty much XLF guy?
Still in the XLFs for now.
All right, and then we're going to finish up here with I thought we'd throw in a retailer for good old Sebastian. I know this is not it's not Chico, a clothing retailer. It's not Chico's, so it's not as exciting. I know you like your woman's clothes for 50 and older. That's really kind of your sweet spot.
Love me Chico's.
But this is the next best thing I could find for you today. This is Men's Wearhouse.
That's nothing like Chico's.
It's a retailer for men's clothing.
Dare you?
And there's some men go in there who could be older. I don't know. The guy who's on the commercial looks kind of older, so there you go.
I guarantee he's older.
Oh, I love that commercial.
Yeah,
I like the new commercial where he's driving around in the car.
I haven't seen the new one. I'll have to preview the new. Maybe we'll have an option block Men's Wearhouse commercial theater here on the next episode. But Men's Wearhouse having earnings yesterday and really just knocking it out of the park, closing today up 19%, or nearly 6 handles on the day to close at nearly 38. And this one is not so much activity today, which was a lot of call buying, as you might expect, but we saw one relatively well-timed 600 lot going up yesterday. Someone came in and scooped up 600 of the SEP 32-35 call spreads for about $1.20 a piece. And the interesting thing about this is, A, this guy was right on the money, but B, his optimism was a little bit too muted. He actually left some money on the table by not making a wider and more aggressive spread, because this spread broke through the upside, or the stock, I should say, broke through the upside of his spread and never looked back. So this guy had actually widened out his spread a little bit. Still, I don't think he's really complaining too much. He did fairly well on this spread today. As we said, the stock closing at around 38. This guy, if this guy decides to take it off the table right now, he's making about $1.80 on this trade. But he could have done much, much better if he actually made a little bit more aggressive spread. Not something we see that often here in the op block, people not being aggressive enough with their pre-earnings, perhaps well-informed, well-timed trading, shall we say. But this guy being conservative and knocking it out of the park for the most part. So an interesting trade here in good old Men's Wearhouse. Sebastian, was that you? I know you love your retailers.
Oh, yeah.
Men's clothing retailer.
I did the old Men's Wearhouse Joseph A. Banks straddle swap.
Don't forget the Chico's kicker. You have to have that.
Well, I bought some out-of-the-money calls in Chico's.
Exactly. You have to be long upside in Chico's, otherwise you're just a crazy person.
You're done.
The man who sells Chico's is just a crazy, crazy man. But speaking of selling Chico's, we're going to have to sell short this op block and close it out and dive right into the Xpress Block.
The Xpress Block, brought to you by Options Express. Options Express lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources, Options Express is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, Options Express allows you to trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-to-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio for your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and that rockin' theme means it's time once again for the Xpress Block, where the boys from OX take the reins of the show. And Sean, what little nuggets, what pearls of wisdom, if you will, do you have for our listeners today?
Had a lot of happy clients on the other line on the phone today, as I have heard in the last couple weeks. Last couple weeks, no volume. Sometimes 30, 40-point moves at most. If clients just calling in, more wondering what's going on, just looking for ideas. Today, a lot of happy clients. Must have just been holding for a while. People getting in early, people getting out. I didn't really get the spreads that I have been getting. Put spreads, call spreads. It was more a lot of just single-legged trades. Some that stood out. Ford, as we talked on earlier, had one customer. Bought 1,000 of the November 11 calls for 11 cents. Ford, I believe, was closed at $9.91, up 34 cents. On the other long side, Bank of America had another client call in by 500. Same month, November, $10 calls for 9 cents. Bank of America, $8.35, I believe, up about 40 cents on the day today. Keep in mind that same call, the Bank of America Nove 10 calls, traded over 100,000 contracts today.
Wow.
On the flip side, I did have some people selling into this rally at a client buy some Spider. September week 1, 143 puts. Now these expire tomorrow. 1,000 times at 36 cents. He's up against the ropes with a close of 143.77. But if there's anything that can help him out, it can be a disappointing jobs number tomorrow.
Yeah, he's betting on non-farms, not exactly looking too stellar tomorrow.
With the SPY up 286.
I would be surprised if we got another big rally tomorrow. I think we might get a little bit. It'll come out like it'll be kind of like a silent fart.
This is why we missed you so much, Sebastian, on the show, bringing that extra level of color and clarity out there.
There you go.
Listeners. Painting a mental picture, if you will.
And not I don't mean like a smelly fart, but when like you think it's going to be a big, loud, smelly fart, and instead it just comes out kind of like, and it doesn't really make a lot of noise, and it doesn't really smell, and it was like a fart that never was. That's what I think tomorrow's news could be like.
A whimper, eh?
Yes. The fart that never was.
Well, if it's a whimper, this guy's not going to be looking too happy. He needs to use your very unpleasant analogy. He needs a very, very disastrous movement in order to really make these puts look good. Sticking with your movement analogy from earlier.
I have one more trade to talk about, and then I have my favorite trade of the day. It immediately made me think of Mark. But before I get into that trade, I did have another client who's been talking about gold the last few weeks with me, and he finally jumped into the game. He bought some GLD December 170 calls, and he bought 130 of them for about $475. Gold, as we know, I believe, cracked 1,700 ounces today for the first time in a while. GLD closing right around 165. So the gentleman who's been talking about gold for the last few weeks, who is a futures trader as well, decided to stay away from the future itself and buy him some time. And again, those are the GLD December 170 calls at 475. I do think they closed below his purchase price, but he's not really too concerned in the short term.
I love what you said there about how he's been talking to you about gold for several weeks. This guy, has he just been calling you up saying, hey, I might get into gold today? Or is he executing other trades?
Something like that. We have clients that kind of, and not so many words are, give me a winner. And obviously at Options Express, we don't give advice. So we can kind of just say what we're seeing, what we're hearing, but we can't say, yeah, do this or do not do that. This client, not so much like that, but kind of pushing for it. But he finally jumped in the game and bought 130 December 170 calls. And then my favorite trade of the day on the desk. When I got this call, I was going to call Mark right away, but I decided he was probably too busy doing something else. Somebody called in and sold 500 of the SPX September week 2 $1,300 puts for a quarter. With the SPX closing around 14.32 today. Mark, how do you like that trade?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Don't hate it. I could think of, I could probably think of a couple different ways of twisting that Rubik's Cube. But no, I don't think that's bad. What do you think?
I just thought of you right away and think that you would like that trade. We got 130 point from this strike price here. This guy's got, I thought you would love this trade right away. So
yeah,
it's guys like this are the reasons that VIX just can't catch a bid, because people keep coming in and just blasting out Primo and SPX whenever they can get a chance.
Yeah, that's true. I know.
Yeah,
but like I said, it really wasn't too many spreads today. There was a lot of people just going long calls, long or short puts. Those 5 trades I rattled off are the ones that stood out the most size-wise. As I talked about earlier, I am looking forward to the unappointment number. I believe it may be a little bit more than a fart, as Mark states. I'm also looking forward to next week. As I said, Drago, whatever you want to call him, did come out swinging today as expected. But there still are some, German constitutional court rulings on all this next week.
That could be interesting.
That is on the 12th. Which is also the same day the Fed meets, and then the Fed speaks on the 13th. So looking forward to that all next week. So today's beautiful day on the upside could all be taken away in a matter of 3-4 days.
Hey, Ivan Drago, he must break you, right?
Yes, exactly. And I do like to end the show with a couple history notes. Last week we did the old SPX closing on up 65% of the time. on the Friday before Labor Day. This week we get, this is the first time since August 3rd that the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ, and the SPX all closed up 1.8% or higher. So it's been a month since we've had a move like this to the upside of this extreme. And also, lastly, Amazon hitting an all-time high of $252.70 today, mostly related to the Kindle Fire release news.
A lot of love for that Kindle Fire HD. Well, thank you for that, Sean. Before we go, Sebastian, I'm guessing you have a fantastic Rocky III Ivan Drago impression, so let's hear it.
You will lose. And that's Rocky IV.
Is that? I always get those confused. Which is Rocky III?
It's Rocky IV. Yes.
Rocky III is with Thunder Lips.
Rocky
and,
III is Mr.
Lang.
T, right? Yeah.
I pity the fool.
Rocky III has the latently homosexual running scene, whereas Rocky IV has the Rocky
working out in the snow,
working out in 28,000-foot mountains.
That's right. He's up at the top of the mountain, gets his workouts in, and he's yelling, "Drago! Drago!"
Yeah.
Still one of my favorite movie theater experiences of all time, Rocky IV. It was a fantastic.
Second best Rocky movie of all time next to Rocky III.
I must break you.
I must break you. All right. Speaking of breaking things, we're going to close up the old Xpress Block and dive right into the Uncle Mike Tosaw breaking us down some knowledge block, a.k.a. the strategy block.
The strategy block.
All right, Uncle Mike, it's been a while since you've been on the old program. You've been busy dotting the I's and crossing the T's over at KYO and making sure all those new accounts are set up and ready to go. So our listeners have been missing out on some of your pearls of wisdom here on the old strategy block. So what do you have in store for our listeners who have been longing for, nay, craving a strategy block for the past few weeks?
Well, I want to talk about money management today. Now, some people say that you should risk 5% of your capital, 2% of your capital, or whatever the case may be. And I think it's all relative depending on what you want to do. I want to give you just an example of a time that I recommended a client risk 100% of his capital on a trade, not all of his capital, but just have no stop loss on a trade. A couple of years ago, we all remember Hurricane Katrina. I figured I'd bring this up today because it's kind of fresh in our minds with New Orleans getting more rain like they had. And the client of mine, this was back during the Katrina time, wanted to go short BP. And the reason he wanted to go short BP is because, after all, they're going to go belly up. Everyone's going to sue them, and plus they have all sorts of problems, et cetera, et cetera. So he wanted to go short with a very large amount of money because he was just certain that they were going to go belly up. So after talking it over with him, I said, well, I'm not against that trade. That there's a lot of evidence to believe that the stock's going to go down, but I don't know if necessarily going short is the way to go on this. So after talking for a while, I said to him, well, you think that that this is going to go to zero, they're going to go belly up by the end of the year? Absolutely, no doubt about it. So, okay, how about we buy some put options out of the money, and do you think that they're going to go belly up within the next 6 months? Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what I did was I bought some put options that were far out of the money, and they were set up to where it was if you were to just look at it, very likely that you were going to lose 100% of your capital on it. Now, the size of the trade was less than 1/10 of 1% of the client's net worth. It was something that's extremely small, but because of the fact that everything was so far out of the money, he could just sit there and not worry if he lost all of it. But if BP were to go bankrupt, like he was convinced that he was going to do, I told him, I said, well, you're going to have the biggest problem that you're going to have, Mr. Client, is that you're going to have a huge tax issue because you're going to make a ton of money on this trade if they indeed do go bankrupt like you think they will. So needless to say, it didn't happen. They actually ended up going up during that same time frame. And that client saved, I don't even remember how many thousands upon thousands of dollars for not just shorting the stock. Now, that was a trading loss, no doubt about it, but by setting it up with proper money management, you can be wrong and you can live to fight again. And he's actually one of the most successful traders that I've ever worked with. So moral to the story, make sure that you understand your money management, not just by thinking I'll have this is my stop, this is my profit, and things like that. Look at the big picture of things as to what's the smartest way to go with each individual trade or investment in anything that you do. And that is one to grow on.
I think there are a lot of potential morals to that story. You could say that trading underlying is for simpletons and use options whenever possible because it's just a preferable way to go, or to use leverage and trade those types of trades. Or there's a lot of different morals, I think, to that story, in addition to managing your stake and not putting 1,000% of your assets there on the table for BP to go red or go black. But interesting stuff. I'm glad you talked some sense, I should say, into your client. Hopefully he's been a very loyal client ever since.
He has. It's been we've had a great relationship for many years, and this is just one of those situations where when you talk things out with somebody and you're in a situation like that, you get to, I'm like, well, how about you can probably, if they go bankrupt, I forget, I had it all figured out at the time, I forget the exact numbers, but you'll get probably, if they go bankrupt like you think they're going to, you'll get probably 90% of what you're going to get if you just simply short the stock, and you'll have probably 1% of the risk of that. And so I think that was one of the selling. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was some type of ridiculous number like that. But it goes to show also the flexibility and benefit of having options as a tool in your toolbox.
That's why we're so fond of them. I'm looking here at the chart for BP, and yeah, you're right. It didn't really perform, I think, as a lot of people may have expected in the post-Deepwater Horizon debacle there. It actually fared relatively well. It wasn't until months later that it really sold off kind of aggressively, and even then it certainly was nowhere near the bankruptcy level that your client was predicting. Interesting stuff. Thank you for that, Uncle Mike, and that's one to grow on for our listeners. And now we're going to roll right into our final segment for today, Around the Block.
Around the Block.
All right, and you know what those car horns mean, dear listener? It's time for Around the Block. It also means we're coming up on the end of the show. Sad news indeed, but we have a few more things to hit on. Some interesting stuff coming up later this week. Of course, Sean alluded to it at the top of the show that we do have the non-farms tomorrow. A lot of people are watching that one, including Sean's little SPX put buyer there. Hey, speaking of put buyers there, Sean, how is your trader? We talked last week about that VIX, or I forgot if it was VIX or VXX put spread. Are they still? Is that trade still ongoing, or is your trader? I know he likes to close things out pretty quick. Did they close it out by now?
The VXX side, yes. The VXX, the one who rolled, yeah, he immediately closed it out the day after Labor Day, which would have been this Monday morning. However, my VIX client, which has been hammering those November 20 calls anywhere from $4 to $5. Now we see these things at $3.20, is still long and strong and is really looking forward to blowing out of them, rain or shine, sometime around the 14th of September. But as far as that weekly roll spread in the VXX, that trader was one of those, as I was describing last show, in one day, roll the next, and so on. As soon as those Thursday, Fridays come, when you have both available.
Well, it'll be interesting to see tomorrow if I won't go back into Mark's somewhat colorful analogy, but to see what impact we get from
my colorful analogy, Mark?
Your let's say scatological references earlier in the show here about the non-farms and whether
my gastro it's
gastrointestinal, yes.
Gastrointestinal references.
Yes, we always like to bring in the
You better leave those in.
We like to bring in the digestive tract, whatever possible here on the old. I'm so mad if you cut that. Well, you have to listen tomorrow to find out. And speaking of finding out, of course, we have non-farms tomorrow, whether it's a whimper or a bang or something even more grotesque, we shall see tomorrow. We know which way your put buyer is leaning tomorrow, Sean. We'll see if any others are reasonably surprised, or if we kind of just have. I'm kind of leaning towards the relative whimper side of the fence as well. We had quite an aggressive run-up today, probably have a mild sell-off going into the weekend again tomorrow. tomorrow. Of course, we'll have people probably piling in to crush the VIX again because it's a weekend. Why in the name of God would you want to hold vol through a weekend, particularly all the things we've seen of late? Apparently, no one wants to get that message. Everyone wants to just sell. So,
well, it was the holding through the weekend worked last weekend.
Yeah, it did.
So it's not as simple as everybody likes to lay out. But yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, well, just saying, of late, we've seen so many people just with the tendency to hit those bids on Thursday afternoon and Friday morning rather than riding through the weekend.
Maybe President Obama will give us some indication of the jobs number tonight and the VIX.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll hint to it early in his
He'll start talking about jobs, and you'll see him sweating.
And by the way, after Bill Clinton's speech last night, I want 4 more years of Bill Clinton.
I missed it, thankfully. I decided I made a conscious choice this year to just tune out the conventions.
Does Newt Gingrich as speaker come with them?
I want 4 more years of Ronald
Whether you
Reagan.
hate, whether you're Democrat or Republican, the way Bill Clinton got that crowd going last night, it's one of the best speakers ever. Get him back in there.
Don't get any ideas in his head, because the guy probably thinks he can run again.
I liked him. I liked Bill Clinton, but 48 minutes was a little long for me.
Speeches are historically long.
And he lived up to that reputation of talking for too long. But
he
did make a good speech. But his speech was really, look how great of a president I was, and President Obama can't carry my jockstrap.
But you should still vote for him.
But you should still vote for him, even though he's not as good as me. And
he's the next best thing to me, so vote for him.
And every other president I brought up was Republican.
He's better than an empty chair.
He is better than an empty chair, even if he has an empty soul.
We're getting scatological. We're getting political on the odd block today, or the option block today. It's a good one. We're offending everyone across the board.
I think it just all depends on what the definition of the word is.
Right. I did not have voting relations with that president.
All right, before you offend any more people here, Sebastian, what are you watching for the rest of the week going into the weekend?
I think the German High Court ruling next week could be interesting. Apple earnings announcement next week. I'm going to watch the spread between VIX futures and VIX cash. Has me befuddled, to say the least. I am stymied as to why it acted the way it did today. And makes me think that we're going to get a little bit of a rebound here. Or the VIX is going to drop another 2 points. One of the two.
I kind of washed my hands a few weeks ago of trying to predict exactly why, or determine reasoning why those spreads perform the way it does.
The reason why the spread would move that way today is if there was anticipation the VIX was going to drop another 2 points. Or it was going to pop.
See, they're expecting a whimper for non-farms tomorrow.
Whose earnings next week you're looking forward to again?
Yeah, I think you just blew Uncle Mike's mind. Uncle Mike, don't worry. There are no Apple earnings next week. It's just a product announcement. I could see the smoke coming across the wires as we were saying it.
Product announcement, not the earnings. Did I say earnings?
It's a quasi-earnings event.
Yeah.
No, it's their iPhone 5, iPhone mini, all sorts of products that you don't need. They're going to try and sell you.
So you can put your perfectly good product from last year into the landfill.
Take your $700 stop. You will be happy. And buy Google. You will be happy with that trade.
There you go. Maybe if you're into the tablet biz, maybe Amazon. Maybe Amazon's a surprise stealth player here.
Maybe we want to see the Microsoft Surface.
Oh, yes, I'm selling short Microsoft. Maybe that Surface will be the... if they don't bow down to their hardware partners and price it at some ridiculous price, so they actually pull an Amazon or a Google and price it at an aggressive price, $200, $300, that Surface could be the stealth winner of all of them. It seems to be the most functional by far.
By far it is. And what I'd like to see them do is, I would have liked to see them set up some sort of partnership with their, like a Dell HP, pick like a Dell or an HP or both, and have them, since HP and Dell both want to get out of the PC business, right?
Oh, yeah, it's a terrible commodity business.
Want to get out of it. All right, well, then Microsoft, can use them in production and blah, 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 and they can use that as their flagship seller. Who cares what Acer thinks?
The market agreeing with you today. Microsoft shrugging off the Amazon news and up about 3% today to nearly a point today. So, market not hitting Amazon or not hitting Microsoft on news of Amazon. Apparently, they think it's not going to be not going to hurt them. I guess everyone's still playing wait and see with that Surface to see what actually it is. It's still vaporware right now. They showed it off once and that was it. But if it does come to fruition and it's something interesting and priced not in some absurd $800 price point, it could be pretty interesting. All right, Uncle Mike, what is on your radar for the coming, going into the weekend and the coming week?
Well, besides the fruit company, opening weekend of the NFL season, everyone should be excited about that. Just had opening night last night with the Giants and the Cowboys, and just pretty excited to have something to do on Sunday afternoons again. Aside from that, just pretty much what Sebastian said. I mean, and, of course we have the employment numbers tomorrow, so pretty much I reiterate what the greasy meatball sandwich said.
Not often will you just reiterate Mark Sebastian's comments. Usually,
it's not often that you hear that. No,
especially the scatological and the other. Let's just put it the other category of Mark Sebastian's comments. All right, and Sean, what are you watching? Obviously, non-farms. What else is on your horizon?
Non-farms. Again, I agree with Mark that the German Constitutional Court ruling on the 12th. Looking forward to seeing if this Goog, which came real close to 700 today, will blow past it tomorrow. I have a lot of traders with potential stop orders if Google. I actually should have talked about this in the Xpress Block. Stop orders getting into Google only if it goes past 700. And today we had a high of 699.89, I believe. So I have two traders who will not get into Google for some reason unless it goes past 700, and then they think it's going to take off from there and go back to its all-time high, which I believe was back in 2005, 2006, when it was 760, 770. Tosaw, offhand? The all-time high?
I do not.
Yeah, I believe it was on 760, 770. So for some reason I have a couple clients that believe Google, and Apple will both obviously be 700 someday. Google first, and then Google possibly approaching 800. So two clients on the sideline waiting for it to hit 700 and get in and ride it to 800.
So I guess what they've seen of Google so far hasn't been enough to convince them. But once it hits that 700 level.
Well, you see a stock that moves from 575 to 700 in a matter of since 4th of July. So in 2 months, this thing moved 125 points. That's 20-some%, roughly. Yeah, they did not believe after the first 50 points that this was going to sustain. Now they're believers if it hits 700.
This has been an interesting one to watch because that period you mentioned, late July till now, hasn't exactly. Well, they released an Nexus 7. That was a big development.
And it's the same for Apple. When Apple came out with their earnings last, they also got, dropped 50, 40 points that day. And look where we are today.
Yeah, I'm still kind of scratching my head about the Google movement of late because the last few weeks haven't exactly been banner news weeks for Google. Of course, the Apple-Samsung verdict, the stealth defendant in that case really was Google and the Android operating system, so that kind of paved the way for Apple to go after them more aggressively. That was not exactly a banner development for them, nor, of course, now today's development of Amazon coming out directly going after the Nexus 7 with their $200 devices, and yet, like you said, Google closing today up nearly 3% or nearly 19 handles to touch around 700. So, yeah, the Google price action of late has me scratching my head a little bit. I don't really see what the impetus is there to keep driving Google up like this right now. Perhaps that's just me. I don't know. All right, and I think that's going to do it here for the Around the Block segment. That's also going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. But before we go, I'd like to give my cohorts here, my partners in crime on the old All-Star panel, a chance to regale you with what they have coming up. So first off, Mr. Sebastian, what do you have coming up in the land of the pits?
Hey, everybody, come and check out our blog. We've been writing it every day. I'll be on Bloomberg Lunch Money next week talking Apple probably. So just read my blog every day. It's really, really, really good.
All right. Thank you for that, Mark. And Mr. Tosaw, I know you guys have been busy rejiggering a lot of things over at KYO of late, but are you ready now to dive back onto the old webinar train and all the other activities you had going on?
Yes, we're actually very excited, and I am going to make it.
That was a little terrifying. I'm not good at coming through my headphones like that.
Well, you had to make the sound effect. That makes it worthwhile, right? I am announcing live right here on this show, in a recorded manner, of course, that the webinar train is going to be starting again on the night of October 2nd at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:30 p.m. Central Time. We are going to make the debut of the Tuesday night webinars. What we're going to do, we're going to have a guest speaker every Tuesday night. And the debut speaker for us on Tuesday night, October 2nd, is going to be none other than Seabass himself, the greasy meatball sandwich. And the topic's going to be Intro to Weekly Options. We're excited about that. We have another commitment for Tuesday night, October 9th. We're going to have Price Headley from Big Trends. He's going to be our guest speaker, and he's going to be talking about adjusting the Iron Condor trade. We're still in negotiations with other speakers at this point, but updates will be coming soon, and this is all, of course, dependent upon licensing agreements with which we need to get done with various regulatory industries. So this is a 99% certainty that these will actually happen, but if they don't happen on those dates, they will happen shortly in the future at some point, but that's what we're aiming for, and we're very confident we'll be able to get everything done, and that's what we got coming at Know Your Options.
Exciting stuff, listeners. So if you want to find out more about that, by all means, surf on over to knowyouroptionsinc.com and search for I'm sure is there a tab for webinars on there?
There's not yet. We still have to get everything taken care of. So this is kind of like a precursor. We're actually informing the listeners of the option block before we inform the general public, because that's how much we value this show.
Yes. Gotta love the listeners. And speaking of webinars, Sean, I'm guessing OX has a few interesting webinars headed our listeners' way over the coming week.
Yeah. First, want to touch on, obviously, Options Express is very much into the innovation of new products. And once those products are out there, always improving them. My last show, I did touch on the walk limit that we came out with, which is a type of order feature for spreads. Last night, we enabled the walk limit to now work for 3- and 4-legged option strategies. So you can now do them for condors and butterflies of sort. So that is a new tool that was just out about a month ago and only working for spreads only, 2-legged strategies. Now, 1 month later, we improved it to 3- and 4-legged strategies. And a second feature we recently just came out with last week, it can now roll a spread by one click of the button. Will automatically throw it into a 4-legged strategy. Obviously, the old one being 2 legs closing and the 2 new ones opening. The old way before, you had to open up a blank condor order form, put the old 2 legs in, and then your 2 new legs that you're rolling the spread to. But now by the click of just by hitting, we have a tab that just says roll spread, automatically fills in the 2 legs that you're rolling, and you fill in the blanks of what months or weeklies you're going to next. So those are 2 new innovative products in the last month that have been improved. And we do have one workshop in the LA area on October 6th at the Marina del Rey. I believe that is a hotel. Yes, it's a Marriott, actually. And so that's going to be in Marina del Rey, California. So if anybody's in that area, you can look up the event at www.optionsexpress.com. And you go to the free workshop section. It's basically going to be one of our market makers, Jim Ruzan, will be showing you how to get into a trade, and once you're into a trade, the exit strategy. So we're talking, this is my max gain, this is my max loss I'm willing to take. You're going to be talking stocks, weekly options, and spreads. This is October 6th in Los Angeles.
Good stuff. Marina del Rey. That's a fun place to have a webinar. I might just fly out there just to go out there and maybe just skip out on the webinar, but I'll just check out the area because it's a good place to be this time of year. Of course, Chicago this time of year, not exactly too bad either. And of course, speaking of upgrades and upcoming things, I teased last week on the show that we had a bunch of upgrades coming to the Options Insider over the weekend. Well, we had to delay those a little bit, as everyone who's ever worked on the web knows. There's a lot of fun behind the scenes going on to make anything happen, and we had to to delay it. Hopefully those changes should go into effect this weekend. So when you surf on over to theoptionsinsider.com on Monday morning, you'll see a little bit of a tweak to the layout, but a lot of behind-the-scenes changes that'll make it even easier for you to find all of your favorite options content and news and education and analysis, and of course, all of your episodes from Options Insider Radio and all the other programs on our Options Insider Radio network, including the Option Block. But before we go, all of us here on the old All-Star panel want to thank all of you out there in the listening audience for downloading and streaming and subscribing to this program and making it such a success. And we'll see you next time right here on the Option Block.
Become a part of the Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. The preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.